Hello, everybody. Geraldine Rose here, experimenting as usual. This time it was with bubble bath over top of watercolors. This Christmas card was for the Crafty Canuck release over at Scrap and Stamp. They are a new Canadian company. They have die cuts, they've got stencils, they've got embellishments, and there's more to come. We were playing around with it, and I had the idea that I wanted to do a starry background because I've got the starry swirl stencil. I remembered that old salt technique where if you put salt over top of a wet watercolor panel, that it will dry with a really neat effect. I'd also heard that if you use soap bubbles with watercolor, you can get another neat effect. My mind is like, oh boy, I want to try that. So I didn't really feel like putting dish soap palmolive on it, so I got out my bubble bath. As you can see, I had ink blended my panel and I got out the bubble bath and I put over top of it. And then I got out my Gonzai Tombi gem colors. And what you do is on the bubble bath, little bubbles, you put your very wet watercolor over top of it. I chose the metallic ones because I wanted the background to have a luster to it. I ended up spritzing the underside of the panel because you saw it was curling too much. I'm starting to let it dry here. It's not warping too badly, but it's still really, really wet. And that's where I was like, okay, all right, it's time to go in with the salt. I only have kosher salt for pickling, so I've got the big chunks. Let this dry for several hours, and here's where I am rubbing off the dry salt. I think because it was more metallic paint that I was using, it didn't give as much of the typical effect. So we'll try that again. But hey, it's an experiment, right? You never know until you try. And then I brought out that starry swirl stencil from the Crafty Canuck and my solar paste from Simon Hurley. I am putting them in just a few spots, and I'm really wanting to smooth these ones down. That's right, you know it. Of course, this is mixed media. That means there's going to be more layers added, right? Using my larger spatula to smooth that out, I did put this aside to dry after. Stencil reveal. I think I went off and did some housework because there was many back and forths between these layers. All right, so I set the stencil back down again, got out the Versamark. I'm pressing as hard as I can through those holes because this is where I'm going to bring in the embossing powder. Our first one up is the Sparkly Holographic by Ranger. We're only going to put a little sprinkle of that on. We're going to switch it to the Vintage Pearl next. And then from underneath, I'm tapping it around the same that I would with an embossing glaze so that I can get it to stick on those little spots of Versamark that I've got all through the panel. Of course, we're going to heat set it. You can see that it did start curling up a little bit. I, again, set it aside underneath a bunch of acrylic blocks to let it dry. Then I put it back down. This is where I'm coming in with another layer of solar paste over top to really have more of the stars in the background, but you still see the embossing and the underlayer of solar paste in there. Okay, we'll put that panel aside to dry and let's get to cutting the ornaments. These are the snowflake ornaments from the Crafty Canuck. I used the same colors that we've got on the panel. We have a purple, we've got a mid blue, and we've got a bright pink. Now, I also brought out the blending brushes that we had used for the bottom background panel. I'm taking what's left over of the ink on them and I'm going around the outside of those spheres so that it looks like they've got the light shining on them in the middle and there's a highlight there. Once that's dry a little bit, put glue on the back of the upper layer of the snowflake, glued them together. The little silver cap that's for the top of the ornament, I did it in 2 layers. I've got a holographic and a silver. One of them I split so that it shows out behind the top layer. That's why you can see that I've gone in a second time. You're like, what is she doing? No, there is actually 2 layers of silver there. It does slightly show. It gives another round depth effect to that cap on it. Also brought out the birch frames. I want these ornaments to be hanging off of tree branches because you know how some people decorate their trees outside. I cut them out, but I did it so that they didn't cut the top portion so that I can extend those branches out a little bit better. For the sentiment, the shadow layer in the background, I wanted it blended with like the blue and the purple. The top layer is going to be in white because that's going to have the most contrast and stand out against that background. We're using the Christmas season die set from Altenew. Did a couple of layers of white to put over top. I didn't emboss it. I just let it go with its matte appearance. And that's me just throwing the dies down. If it comes out the first time, yay. Otherwise, I get out the pick tool to push things out. Putting our top layers on, I have got the tittles in the little triangle tray up at the top because I have learned that if I don't do that, I lose them. All right, let's jump to the inside of the card. We're also using an Altenew stamp set, the Halftone Holidays. I am going to do this in the 3 colors. So we're using the blue, we're using the pinks, and we're using a deep purple for them. I'm going, of course, back and forth to set them down. The season, it has a halftone stamp that goes over top of that. We're going to bring that in at the end. I hadn't used it that much before. When I did it this time with the different inks, I was like, oh, I really like the way that it's got the little halftone dot gradients in there. You can also tell that that stamp, the other time I used it, I used my very bright tickled pink on there and it stained it pretty badly. But hey, it's a well-loved stamp, isn't it? With color theory, of course, pink and blue make purple. That's what happened when they dried back. The pink is much more subtle. We'll throw a custom stamp on the back. And for the ornaments, because they're going to be hanging, we need some metallic thread. This is from Altenew. They have it like in lavender, silver, and gold. I believe I pulled out the lavender one. Thought it would go well with the tones that we got in the back because, of course, this is a very cool toned card. I strung those through. I've got the branches arranged coming in from the side because 3 branches, 3 ornaments. We're going to hang them down. They're all going off the edge of the panel at some point. We will take the scissors and fix that. A couple of them I went and put the ultra sticky tape on because of the layers of solar paste and embossing powder that we've got on there. And here we are just snipping. I find that part very satisfying, actually, and flipping your card around and just snippity snip. And I can see that one I still had some glue that was still wet on the back there. Probably cleaned my scissors off afterwards. Okay, so we've got the white layers on top. We've got that slight shadow layer with the blue. I did bring in some shimmer vellum. I as well probably have a white layer behind. Yes, I do. So that it creates a vellum sandwich. And that's the one that you put your glue on the back of the sentiments to get them to adhere better to the panel. Setting it centrally between our 3 ornaments. We'll put the Mary up on the top. I already have the tittle in place, and I find it easiest with that to put the dots down onto your panel and then put each successive dot over top rather than trying to glue them by themselves elsewhere. Okay, we're also using some Nouveau Dream Drops. There's already so much other shine going on in the background that I didn't want to bring in a whole bunch of shiny, shiny, bling, bling. So that was all we did. And that's the finished card. This thing, oh, when you tilt it, oh, it's so lustrous. And then you open it up and on the inside, it's like, oh, well, that's actually quite nice. It isn't all in your face, right? So you guys go do some experimenting too. Have some fun in your craft room. Thanks so much for subbing and watching. We'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.